Welcome to Coffee Talk, brought to you by Hyatt Commercial.
I'm your host, Justin Mullen, where industry executives talk leadership, culture, and commercial real estate. Grab your coffee and let's talk business.
So like all of this is very organic, that it's like grown into what it has. Like somebody asked me, like why I decided to do it. And I really didn't have an answer other than I just like talking to people and learning and like having interesting conversations. And Gabrielle convinced me that other people might find that interesting too.
Yeah.
So
how all the things begin.
Well, appreciate you coming out in the snow and everything. Okay. So I am excited to have Bailey Feldman with me today. As we were just saying, in true everything happens at once in life, managing all the stuff that's going on. I think at least had to reschedule once, maybe even twice now.
Twice, yeah. We're
holidays got in our way. So we were supposed to do this back in December. Now it is the beginning of February because of the great frozen tundra that we've lived in the last 2 weeks. So thanks for coming out. Been excited to have this conversation with you. And as we start every podcast, I will start you with kind of our pointed question, which is, if you had to describe your leadership style in one word or just a couple of words, how would you do that?
Yeah, I love this question. And I've been thinking about it, and my answer was experimental. Like I'm in a very experimental type phase of leadership. Things are, like you just mentioned, things are just changing and shifting in my personal, my professional life, and it's very blended. And so I think the way that I'm leading is by example, is failing fast in a way, but also just experimenting, checking things out, realizing what are my barriers and my risk tolerance when I go down this way or that way or make decisions, and how I support people. I'm grounded in larger purpose and values of that. But I think from a leadership perspective, it's really been experimental, leading with curiosity, leading with openness, and being really kind of open to pivot or fail and get up and move and try again. Because I just think the nature of where my business is and where my family life is, it's just a little wild.
Well, that's awesome. That's not one I would have predicted, but a great answer nonetheless. With that, it is interesting having you on because I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself here in a second because you'll do a better job than I will. But, as a leader, you're running a business, but you're also creating a community. And you've got to convince these people to kind of join your community, which is a little different than a business owner that's just building a business. So with that, explain what your current role is professionally and give us a little bio on your personal and professional life as it sits today. And then we'll kind of dig into the past and go from there.
Cool. Bailey Feldman, and I'm the founder of Fount and Flourish. So I like to explain as a women's social community and co-working space. We have a physical office space downtown, and that's the hub of where we gather as professionals during the day. But then our larger intergenerational community of women, which consists of women from 27 to 72 at this point. We about have 150 members. That's kind of where we do a lot of our programming and events. We kind of gather through these threads of mind, body, and soul. So joining the Fount, you might be using the workspace, but it's the heart of the Fount is the social membership. And so when you join the Fount, I always say you're seeking to meet someone new, learn something new, or try something new. And it's been a really beautiful group of women that have come together. We celebrate our third year in March.
Congrats. 150 members in 3 years is quite a lot of growth.
Yeah.
With that being said, and you and I did talk a little bit 2 months ago, I know that your family and kind of your move to Annapolis and your previous professional life plays a big role in all of that. Yeah. So give us a little bit of insight there too.
Yeah. I think the trajectory, so I moved to Annapolis about 15 years ago. After kind of grad school and a little bit of stint in the South Carolina. I'm from Florida originally, so this weather is not my jam.
No.
That's probably why we canceled the first one. Because it's snowing, I can't do anything.
I don't blame you.
So moved here for a job, nonprofit work, and actually was blessed to meet my husband here. So I'm from South Florida, he's from Boston, and we kind of joked that we met in the middle. We really built a really cool community of people here, and we're able to then start families together. We got married, have 3 kids, 3 girls who are 8, 6, and 5. I'm always like, what are their ages? And from my career, so I was nonprofit work for 2 different nonprofits, but also the heart of everything I've done has been centered around the study of both behavior change and gathering. I'm even an environmental science and sustainability background. You learn a lot about who are people and how do they think and how do they make decisions. And so a lot of that learning, even though I don't do environmental work or never done environmental work professionally outside of graduate school, really pulls a thread through like, hey, who are these humans that are coming to this space and why does it matter? And into nonprofit work, and then even my consulting career where I really studied gathering. So for the last 15 years, studied group dynamics, human dynamics, why people come together, how do you create spaces, and how do you create impact from those spaces? And so I loved nonprofit work. I tended to, in both industries, was like, I think I can make this work better. But no one ever let me do that because I was not in charge. I was kind of like running projects and executing. And so I was introduced to consulting work and went and joined a boutique consulting firm in DC. And then I love that because then I get to pop into different organizations, specifically did a lot of federal government work. And then I got to provide like creative problem solving. I always joke I'm not creative in the sense of an artistic way, but really in like a solutions designing, problem solving type way. So nonprofit to consulting work, really studied how people work, how they make decisions, how you build strong cultures, how you create spaces that impact change. And then, I think a lot of people experience like motherhood for many women, parenthood for many people kind of creates a shift to like look back on like, what am I doing? And how does this relate to things that I care about, that I value? And that feel like really bring purpose to me and my life and my family. And so I loved consulting. To this day, I still love consulting. If I went back, I wouldn't hate it. But I wanted to kind of use those skills and expertise, more locally. Like I just had this feeling of like, hey, I'm leaving my babies, I'm leaving my husband, I'm leaving my community in and out of DC every day and putting my time and energy and effort. So there's this kind of disconnect to like what I'm building and where I'm spending my time. And that started getting me thinking like, I love building these spaces, but I also like, as I experienced motherhood, I wanted to do more work with women. I've always really been empowered by strong women in my life and watching women take these different paths and these journeys. And what I didn't love is when they took different paths and journeys, like I started to feel isolated from them. So when I became a corporate working mom, I spent time with a certain amount of people and I got disconnected from my friends who chose different paths to run their own businesses or to take career pauses and stay home with their kids. And I felt that was a real disservice to, how we can build this village and come together and learn from each other if you're only spending time with people who are in a similar season of life. So it's a little like wild all over the place, but like the Fount was built from, I love gathering. I want to create, advocate, support, and create more spaces for women with these skills that I have. And then becoming a mom, I wanted to kind of really rebel against certain stereotypes or niches that I was forced into. So that really, I had all these awesome ideas and I was thinking about it a lot. And I'm answering this really long-winded and part of like multiple kind of phases. But then, a lot of people too had big pivots during the pandemic.
Yeah. We will dig in deeper on this because that is.
I know. I was like, I might be jumping the guns.
No, but one of the cool things is like what you just described is why, like, a lot of why Hyatt Commercial is based in Annapolis still to this day, right? We've been around for 65 years now. But personally, I grew up here and went to University of Virginia, saw lots of friends go to big corporate roles or, New York City and do other things. And, but what I've always prided us on is like that you get this really high quality of life with a really like close knit community, which, raising kids here. My kids are essentially the same age as yours. You really get ingrained in like a local community through schools, through sports, through all of that. And yet we also are very close to a couple of big cities in Baltimore and DC. But we have now, with people like yourself who have moved here and brought their businesses with them, created a culture of like very high level people that live in and around this area. And one of the things that I've admired about your business as I've learned about it over the last couple of years is that you've created a place not only for like highly successful and creative business owners and operators, but then you focused it on women where men have other like activities. Like I've always felt like you can be a member of a golf club here, or a member of a pickleball team, or like there's different places that men interact that feel like they're outside of business, but a lot of business is still done and you start to build your community around that. And that's one of the things that I think is really special about what you've built is that you've created that, I think you call it third place, right?
Yeah, like a third space.
Yeah, third space that people can, in particular, women can come, probably let their guard down a little bit, and build a community around it. So everything you just said is why I really wanted to talk, and so the one thing I would ask though is give a little background, on how you've created that culture and comfort level, in particular for somebody that's at, in your phase of life where you're running a business, recruiting people to join you, and having to raise kids and bounce around and do all those kinds of things.
Yeah. And you kind of mentioned this, like, oh, you're creating, what I'm selling is a little bit different than maybe a specific type of product. And I think what was really cool for me and that really set the tone for how I built the Fount was it was something I was really passionate about. It was something I didn't know exactly what it was going to look like kind of still on that theme of experimental. But I always knew how I wanted women to feel. I knew how I wanted women to feel safe and connected and nourished when they left the space. And so even as I was building, I was like, hey, how do I want women to feel? But when I launched this, I sold 50 tickets to this launch party. And yeah, maybe 25, 30 were friends. I think something a hard thing to learn when you get into business is like your friends are not always your your first customers. Yeah. And that was like a big, a lot of the Fount membership is not like my core, close friends who I maybe thought would be my first people in there. Yeah. But anyway.
One of the interesting things about that too, because as we've built our business, you do build like these really personal relationships and you can connect to everybody.
Yep.
And then you start to grow and somebody says, oh, I'm a member of the Fount, or a client of Hyatt Commercial, and I've never even met them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't even know them.
Yes.
But somebody else has now taken what I feel like I had a lot of ownership of and turned it into their own thing too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's cool to kind of see how it shifts and evolves and grows. But yeah, I think it was really something for me to setting the stage here is like, hey, I know I wanted women to feel. And I had this launch party and I had 50 people come. And again, there was a bunch of people showed up and I didn't have anything. I had no proof points. And I sold people on this dream I had. And I was really open. And I was like, hey, I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't fully understand how it's going to form. But what I did and what continues to be a thread that's really shaped, I think, the culture and how we show up as a community is I said, hey, here's my invitation. Come and do this with me.
Yeah.
Come and build this with me. I'm open to feedback. I'm understand we're going to mess it up a few times, but when we get it right, let me know. When we get it wrong, let me know. And it was really cool because reflecting in year 1 and 2 and 3, I kept being like, hey, the first time I stood up in front of a crowd like this, I just sold this idea. Yeah. And now I don't just sell an idea. I sell a real thing. Hey, we have a proof point, but it was a really cool invitation. And I think that set the stage for how women came in and started to create that culture of comfort, safe space because, hey, I'm in this thing with this woman and I want to be a part of it and contribute to it.
Well, one of the things I've found as I've grown the businesses and really relationships, I describe myself, my leadership style as a connector.
Yeah.
Right. Connecting people and, or places and things. And, but that sense of community that you wanted and you understood, even though you didn't know the details of it, bluntly, it probably wasn't that unique of a thought. But executing on it is the unique part. And so when you described what you were looking for, people understood it. Yeah. But somebody had to execute on it, which is what you're doing now, And so how do you continue to lead experimentally while also securing what your vision is? Because experimenting is great.
Yeah.
But as you get bigger, experimenting may not continue to work. So, how do you kind of set that vision? Do you have a leadership system or do you have a, and again, with past guests, we've talked about the entrepreneurial operating system or different forms of growth or leadership. Is there anything that you use now or?
Yeah, I don't have a specific answer for any form of system or over tech or operationally. I think some things have been really beneficial for me. I kicked off with a board of advisors day 1. Yeah. And they were founding members who invested in the vision I had. And so from day 1, I had 6 women who were not only cared about me and what I was doing and understood the vision. Not all of them knew me, but they were going to invest in this idea and be actively in some of the decision-making with me quarterly from there on. And then at year 2, I started to bring in additional experts. So you've got these women who hey, I believe in the heart of this. And then now my board includes those women, but it also includes layers of expertise that had been missing. And that was huge.
And I dig in on that a little bit, meaning you've described that you've got this community and you've got this shared workspace. What's the connection between those two things? Meaning you bring in experts to talk to your members of your community, right?
Yeah. So 2 different things. So with obviously we have 150 members. Every member is a social member and they have access to these kind of different events that we throw. And then of those members, about 40 of them also are coworking members and kind of just like have access to the space here and there. So we use experts in 2 different ways. We bring them in for like expert office hours, and actually like I say, I create the space and I bring in women to fill it. Yeah. I don't pretend I have all the expertise in the world. And that's how I've partnered with over 225 small business, family, women-owned businesses since I've started, because like we bring in those expertise and those people from like a leadership and entrepreneurial type perspective and how I run the company. My board of advisors has grown from this intimate group where I've got now 9 women, and they all have a very specific lens or expertise and that I meet with quarterly and help influence like when I make big decisions for the company. And so I don't feel isolated. And a lot of entrepreneurs can feel isolated. But since day one, I've had people who are saying, hey, we're going to do this and be with you on it. And you're going to call us in when you need it. So that's like how we've kind of evolved from experimental. Like we still experiment, but then when we get something right, we try to like standardize it. Yeah. So like pulling in our first employee, like really have standardized, like she was a generalist and now she's a specialist. Like she now has a very specific role because we know what she's good at and she's got our systems and structures for that. And when we do certain events that work really well, I start to find those members, we're 3 years in, who get it. Like they understand the heart of the Fount, so I can start to hand things off. So like we have a group of 3 women who run book club. We have someone who teaches Mahjong lessons. We have someone who runs a writer's circle. So we have someone who runs our art hobby happy hours. So once you start to find these people, I've started to be able to expand my programming because they get the heart, the culture, and the purpose of what we're doing. They understand the community we're trying to build, and they have a specific skill set that they can give back to. And we can kind of create this really mutually beneficial relationship.
It's such a cool idea because again, you're recruiting people to be part of it and then also really contribute in it, which is a lot of fun. And not changing topic completely, but do you describe yourself as an entrepreneur? Like, how do you describe yourself? Like, not your leadership style now, but like your actual role. Like,
yeah, I think we talked on phone. We like talking about like, hey, what's like, how did you get here? Like, have you thought about entrepreneurship? And I was just at the Arundel Biz Expo where I was on a panel speaking. And that was one of the questions. And growing up, my dad has owned an air conditioning company for 30 years in South Florida. And literally ingrained into me was never own a business. Like that was like, great.
We joke around about that too. Like, own your own business. You'll make your own hours. You'll control your own destiny. Like, right.
That's it was so funny.
It's great when it's great, but it's really hard when it's not dreams of like, so that's the question I always ask people too is like, what's your earliest memory of being an entrepreneur?
None.
So your earliest memory.
My earliest memory is my dad saying, don't do it. Like never do it.
It's easy to say, but I'm sure you grew up with a lot of like great benefits of being the daughter of somebody that was taking this.
And he's a service-based industry. And I think like you learn a lot about customer service and customer experience and what it means to be honorable and intentional about how we build something meaningful. And he showed me a lot about that, which looking back, it's really fun to be able to call my dad now, even though our industries are way different, but did not think about an entrepreneur.
I'm sure he still has guidance for you. I mean,
for sure. Yeah. He's really helpful. And I think the only thing to add about like entrepreneurship is someone once said, you're born an entrepreneur, like growing into that role, or you like, there's just a space that calls to you so deeply and no one else is filling it. So like, if not me, then who? Yeah. And for the Fount, once I started to really put my brain around it, I was like, hey, this is not the smartest decision, but like we've got our risk tolerance, like we've got some room there. We can wiggle. This is not going to end us if we get the space and try this thing and experiment it. And I just remember going home, calling my husband, like, if not me, then who do I expect to do this thing? Like, let's give it a shot. And I felt so called to this like one specific thing that kind of kicked it off for me.
With that too, when we did talk a couple months ago, you mentioned the term legacy and like your kids, coming up and that community still being there. And it was really timely for me because I also think a lot about legacy. And as we've set like our 10-year vision for Hyatt Commercial, one of the things that we've added to that is, that we're creating a legacy that we would be proud to bring our children into, you know? And so talk a little bit about that, like now with 3 kids that are, growing up quickly, as I've found out happens,
like, wait, what?
You can actually look out 10, 15 years and go, what do I want to be? What do I want this to be? Like talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think, as I started building the Fount too, like I wanted to create, back to pandemic and pivoting, like, I saw women going into isolation. I saw women leaving the workforce. And I was like, hey, we've got to do something about this. And how do I start to stretch and pave the way for more space for this like women in my season now? And then as I got started, the bigger question was like, how do I make this sustainable so that it starts to trickle down? And so this is something that's not like a novelty for my kids. Like this is just something that, similar to like the golf clubs or different things that like maybe have been more traditional spaces for men over time. Like, how do I create something that's just like, oh, this is something that I'm allowed to take.
Yeah.
I'm allowed to have this space. I'm allowed to own it. And so a lot of when I'm building is trying to not just create this sustainable space for women to feel like, hey, this space is here and I deserve it. I can step into it and lean it. I can claim it. It's for me. And then also, so that's just like this behavior change trickle down. My kids can watch it. They can show up. My 8-year-old comes and she has jobs in the Fount. And it's really cool to like see them talk about it and start to like, this is what my mom does.
Yeah.
So it's fun to show them just what it means to like do hard work and do hard things and figure stuff out and kind of be a leader in a space. But I also think we're trying to create a space that eventually trickles down and it's just so normal to them.
Yeah. Well, it is interesting you say that because most clubs are definitely bigger than just the person who either founded it or who is currently running it. And not all businesses can do that though, so the fact that you're kind of having to create both, the club side gives you, the ability to, but sometimes you're so influential as a leader that, it's hard to step away from those things. And that is something that we talk about a lot with other entrepreneurs or business owners is like, how do you step back a little bit and really hand off the reins? And like, where are you in that process? I mean, you said you got an employee, like, where are you in the process? And the cool part is that your members can take ownership of some of the things that you're providing. So how do you handle that balance?
Yeah, I think some of the best advice I got early on when I was starting is like build a sellable business.
Yeah.
And I think I keep that in mind. And it doesn't mean like at the very beginning, I'm not going to be connected. Like I know I'm connected. My heart is what leads a lot of like, hey, this is, I sold the dream. I sold the vision I had. But I do think I'm often thinking about the structure of, hey, what does this look like if I stepped out or someone took it else on? So like having the board, they show up in different ways, not only in decision-making in the back end, but they run conversations. Like they help me co-host spaces, having my employee like take over parts of the process and then kind of engaging and bringing this community. Now that we have it, like let them fill the space, like let them be the voices of the community. I was talking to another entrepreneur and she's like, I just don't want to be the face of my business. I was like, you might have to be the face of your business, but you can have an exit strategy for that. Yeah. And so we're in the middle of it, but I think I started wanting to know I want to build a sellable business. And I constantly think about what's my exit strategy to make sure that I'm not the sole face of this business. And so we're like in the middle.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's one of the things that we've really worked on when Gabrielle joined us as director of development and agent resources initially, I'm being reminded. Yeah, she took a real generalist role and then grew herself out of some of the generalist parts of that and brought other people in to run it underneath of her. And so not that I've been able to do this, but if I had to walk away for 10 days or 2 weeks or a month, I know that our day-to-day operations will continue on without anybody going, we don't know what to do.
Yeah, that's major. That
it is.
So good.
It takes a long time to get there, and you don't even realize, unless you're like really purposeful about like aiming for that. Yeah. There's times that you can just get stuck and like just doing it. But the biggest challenge of that is handing off the responsibility to somebody else. Yeah. Like surrounding yourself with great people. Just building the community that you're building, you're naturally doing that. So you got a huge advantage there.
I think that's probably back to that experimental word too plays into here a little bit because like I built a business and I was like, hey, what's really important to me? And my husband's a school teacher and my kids are school age. And I was like, I'm going to take the summers off. And part of me was like, oh, that's not going to happen for a long time. But that's back to that experimental and fail fast. Like I remember the first year, I'm like, I'm taking 4 weeks. And now I took 6. And then I'm going to take 8. And it's like, you have to do it to work out the kinks sometimes.
And something's going to go sideways.
Always. But we figured it out and we learned. And that also started to like the community knew this was why I did it. And it's important and they get a feel. And then
respect that.
That helps.
When you're very transparent and honest with people, they usually definitely respect that.
Like there's permission. Like, hey, she's giving me permission to like leave for, like we're,
Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, let's talk about a couple of quick hitters. Like now that you are where you are in this, what does a day-to-day look like for you?
Gosh. Today I brewed beer and
exactly.
Really exciting. But
that, by the way, is entrepreneurial stuff.
Yeah.
Right there. Yeah. You may not have wanted to be, but the fact that you can brew beer and call it work.
Yes. So fun.
You're doing all right.
Nailed it. Yeah. I'd say traditionally, so normally like wake up and we'd get the kids out of the house. Again, I have the blessing, my husband takes the kids to school, which is really wonderful. Like when he can't do that, I like know how much time that takes to like get them there and back. So they get out of the house and then I can walk to my office. So I really we don't have an office manager who like runs the day-to-day in the physical space. Like all of our members know how to turn the lights on, get themselves in and make the coffee. That's something we train. But I get in and I just kind of get to work, and I'm often on calls with partners or with our PR firm or with my teammate Gretchen, and we're kind of constantly just like in the day. It looks different every day though. There's like absolutely nothing typical, but we are up to about 6 to 8 events a month. So I'm always planning and or getting prepared for some form of event, whether I'm there or not.
Describe a typical event for you, or there may not be a typical, but
yeah.
A couple of them.
Well, so we always have First Friday, really coffee, casual, informal networking kind of in our office space, the first Friday of the month. We always have a hobby happy hour where you're like learning to do something new. It could be needlepoint, it could be vision boards, or book club. We always do a wellness event. So learning about your body or moving your body. And we always do a big social like outing, just that's for fun. And we usually partner with a local restaurant. So Sea Salt, Leo, Forward Brewing, and we'll go out and we'll just connect and we'll get food and drinks together. So like that's a range of social events. And then there'll be professional leadership, educational pieces in there too.
And without getting totally sidetracked, but how critical is it that your location, like how important to your community is, your physical location?
I'd say we started as a floating community, but I always was seeking a physical space because I think in a world where digital communities have like grown, like having an anchor of something that's like, hey, this is a place and it exists, like helps show permanence. And it helps show like, hey, I'm here for a long time. I'm committed to this community. And so it's been integral to everything that we do. And downtown Annapolis, we're a walkable city and we're right downtown. And a lot of our members walk to stuff, which helps.
And was Annapolis, before you came to Annapolis, did you know you wanted to do something like this, or did the community here play a part in that?
Yeah, because this was all really built out. I've been involved. I grew up in a small Floridian town. I spent a lot of time in Greenville, South Carolina. I had a tight-knit community. So I've been in cities where like community was an integral part of like my day-to-day. And coming to Annapolis, it just like naturally had grown and evolved into that. So the city did like play an impact on it, but it was a while that I lived here before. I kind of was like, hey, this is it. But I knew downtown. I knew I wanted to be like, that's why in and out of DC, I was like, I want to be where I want to be a part of the decisions being made here. I want to be a part of the future that's being built here. I want to make a difference. And being a business owner and owning physical property was like a big part of that.
Yeah, it's interesting. We do get a lot of people reach out to us like looking for, career opportunities and things like that. And a lot of times they, have either commuted to bigger cities and don't want to do that anymore, or they want to be impactful in their own community. So that makes a lot of sense to me. With that, what does the future look like for you guys? Is it a one location? I know you've got kind of satellite groups that you work with. Like, what's the long-term vision if you want to share it with us? 2
long-term things. The first one specifically for the Fount is I've been really trying to study how do you create hyper-local communities that are digitally connected. So I would love to have 2 to 3 locations in the DMV because I think like we're just in a prime area, to have like people be connected, to have something outside of Baltimore, maybe Alexandria. Like how do we kind of create this little triangle of spaces? I would not want to have more than 3. I'm not trying to like franchise, but I do think there's a way to build these hyper local hubs and then also connect them given like where we live and the opportunity that exist. So exploring both with like my digital infrastructure for that future connection and potentially a second space outside Baltimore or inside Baltimore. So I just think that there's a lot of cool people there and businesses.
Again, as we were talking about before we started the podcast, somebody asked me why I started doing this. And really I just like talking to people and having interesting conversations. And so I get the impression that a lot of what you enjoy too is just like meeting new people and connecting, and
so many cool people out there doing really cool things, and we don't get to hear from them.
That's one of the things I've really enjoyed like evolving in my career is in my business where we're calling business owners. It starts with just cold calling. Yeah, and like you're doing that every day, and like if you get 2 conversations and 10 calls, you've been successful. But as I've grown, I haven't had to do as much of that, and I really have focused my entire attention on connecting people, which then becomes, how do I do that? How do I, get a round table of people for lunch, once a month or once a quarter and I'm not trying to sell them real estate. I'm trying to have them all meet each other. And yeah, we do. We recently, a couple of years ago, started an event just for real estate professionals, and not just real estate professionals, but like owners or most senior level people that live, work, or play around Annapolis. Right. So there's, a ton of C-suite people that do one of those three things here, but don't do the other two. Yeah. They're DC based from a business, but they live here, or they have a house here that they come to on the weekends, or they do everything here, and it's been really one of the cool things, like where you get 100 people together that wouldn't otherwise connect, and now there's a little bit of a community that's built around that. So with all of that, if you look out again, the success of Fount was one thing. How would you describe your personal success if you look out 10 years or 20 years? Like, I
know right now we're just, it's so hard to think about years. I'm just like, stability and flexibility are like these critical pillars right now.
That's,
like, how do we build
great description? I love that.
Stability and flexibility, like we don't want to I don't need everything, but I just need that, feel really good about that and say, we got lots of goals for like how do we tee our kids up?
Yeah, right. That's my point. It's like, it's not always, it's rarely just about the business.
And it's like, what does the business look like? But I mean, now I've got an entrepreneurial bug. So I come up with a new business like every day, which is so funny. But I think like the Fount being one thing, I've definitely got goals for that in the next like 5 to 10 years. But I think the big thing is like, hey, me and my husband really set like, what's our goals for these kids? How do we get them set up? How do we like be prepared to like launch them into the world and like as wonderful humans? But I think,
it's funny when you said experimental, like, and kind of knowing that you're at that stage in life, I'm like, that's what being a parent is like.
I know.
It's like, you just gotta, like, nobody gives you a playbook. Like, this is how you do it. Like, you experiment, I allowed them to play with the iPad this time, but, and it got crazy. Now they can't do it. And there's definitely a lot of experimenting and parenting as well. So, well, with that, we appreciate your time. It's a great business that you've built. I will spread the word on your behalf to the best of my ability. And thanks for doing it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. This was really fun. I appreciate it.
Good deal.
Cool.
Nice work.
Thanks for tuning in to Coffee Talk with Justin Mullen. Topics on leadership, culture, CRE, brought to you by Hyatt Commercial. Until next time.